All right, guys, we have got our mini preview and season win total predictions here for the Green Bay Packers. This is episode 12 as we go right through the NFL, more than a third of the way there. And, keep on trucking along. Over, under on the season win total for the Green Bay Packers, 7.5, minus 122 to the over, plus 100 to the under. We're going to go over 7.5 for the Green Bay Packers. So let's jump right on into the coaching and the roster. Coaching, similar, stays the same. LaFleur will stay head coach. He will also call plays. Stevanovic be his guy there. But LaFleur will call the plays. And then Joe Barry we will get to. But he's got a lot on his plate. But let's jump into the roster. Jordan Love, it's all about him on offense, isn't it? What do we have with him? His sample size is incredibly small. He's been sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for a long, long time now. And he's going to come in and be the starter. He'll have a whole offseason of first-team reps and stuff like that. So we'll see. A lot of different assumptions here. I tend to kind of just lay off. I'm just going to kind of wipe the slate clean with Jordan Love here, and we'll see. This is a quarterback-friendly system. He's had interception problems a lot of his career, even to end college and, preseason and stuff. So we'll see with that if that gets better as we go along. But if he has an average season, an average QB type season, like somewhere between, 14 and 17 type season, this is a team that should go over with the roster around it, even if it is very young. And we'll jump into the offensive line, which is probably one of the better units, one of the more experienced units, as we have plenty of solid players here. Bakhtiari, of course, is the best player on the line, but he's always had injury problems. It's tough with Bakhtiari because he's a really good player, and even coming off injuries, he's a really good player, but he needs to stay healthy. What's the guy's name? Zach Tom played left tackle last year instead of Bakhtiari while he was hurt, had a good season. He'll be moving to right tackle, so we'll see there. The interior is very solid. Otherwise, it's a very solid line, and if Bakhtiari stays healthy all season long, could be a top 10 type line. Running back room, another really good unit here. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, two different backs, but they complement each other well. They can rest each other. You can feed the hot hand here. It is a very, very good situation at running back. Wide receiver, this is a talented but very young group. The starters should be Watson and Doubs, who showed flashes. Watson showed flashes toward the end of the year, so we'll see if he can continue that. Doubs showed flashes early and then kind of fell off with Rodgers, and Rodgers kind of just eliminates you from the team when you're not playing particularly well. Lazard leaves this unit, so that's a loss. They drafted Jaden Reed. He'll probably come in and play slot. The rest of it's not super deep, so they'll need to stay healthy. But there's talent here, and if they can all take steps, it could be a really good unit. There's a lot of variety here as well, so we'll see. Tight end room, another one that's really young. Musgrave comes in with the draft. Kraft comes in via draft, and Musgrave's probably going to be the guy. It's a difficult position, as I've said before, to come into the NFL and kind of just jump into. Tight ends take a while, kind of like corners do. So we'll see, but Musgrave, one of the more NFL ready guys, so we'll see if he jumps right in and plays well. He'll need to. So it's a very young unit, once again, a lot like the wide receiver room. Defensive line. Now, the interior is kind of the problem here. The run defense wasn't particularly great. You got Kenny Clark, who's good. Slayton was their best run defender, and he wasn't particularly great. Wyatt had trouble last year. He'll have to jump in and take a really big step on the interior to go ahead and, help the run game and just elevate the floor of this line in general. Edge is deep and good. Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Enigbare. They also have, yes, that's right, the draft pick Van Ness will come in and he'll have a very similar role as he did at Iowa, kind of just coming off on the bench and third downs and just wreaking havoc. So a similar role for him. So it should be an easy transition for him into the NFL. So the edge department's deep, good. It's the interior that will raise the floor here. If Devontae Wyatt has a really good season, the whole defensive line should, raise up with the floor there. The linebacker, in a good spot. Quay Walker had a good year. Campbell had a really good ending stretch to the year. So if he can keep that up into the new year and Quay Walker can take another step, this will be a good linebacking group and not too much to worry about here. Secondary, it was okay last year. Alexander missed some games. He wasn't particularly elite, but he's still a great corner. He'll look to get back to that elite kind of guy. I just worry in general about the secondary. A lot of good wide receivers last year tore the secondary apart. So we'll see, if Alexander's back to being really good. Douglas, continues to be good. We'll see. Savage will have to step into Amos's spot. Ford didn't play a ton, but he played well in his small sample, so they'll see if he can keep that up. It's a mishmash of players here in this secondary, but a pretty good floor. And if they want to step up into the top half, Savage will have to have a bounce back year. Stokes will have to have a bounce back year. Alexander will have to be elite. That's kind of the top half kind of scenario here with this secondary. And average, if they're all average, it's just not going to cut it. So we'll see, but the floor is there. There's some good players here. There's some talent, but they're going to need to, there's some bounce back years that have to happen there in that secondary, and they'll need them to happen. As for the defensive coordinator, we talked about him, Joe Barry. This is a really young defense. There's some big parts from some young guys, Stokes, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, that kind of scenario here. This defense is full of first and second round draft picks. Joe Barry has been underperforming with this defense for a while. He needs to develop these guys, and they need to play well, or the wheels could fall off here. That is it's a non-zero chance here that he's fired midway through the year because the defense is playing poorly. This on paper is the best defense in this division, and Joe Barry needs to go ahead and elevate them to that at least, for them to get over their win total here. So we'll see whether I trust him or not. God knows. I'm kind of just watching and seeing how this will happen, but he needs to step up. His job's probably on the line, that sort of thing here. So develop. Same with LaFleur on offense, but offense hasn't been underperforming necessarily, so, and at crazy rate at least. So it's more on Joe Barry on the defensive side that's getting all the attention. As for the schedule, it's not super easy. It's not crazy difficult. At Chicago and at Atlanta to start, and then New Orleans and Detroit at Las Vegas in the first 5. So that's not easy, but there are winnable games here. At Chicago is winnable. Atlanta, if the run defense isn't fixed, could be problematic. New Orleans at home, they've got plenty of problems of their own. Las Vegas away from home, and then Detroit is a division opponent at home that I think they can hang with, because their defense is bad and they'll be starting the year off kind of disjointed. So if they can go into the bye at 3-2, I think they can have a good season. And we'll also know by the bye all about Jordan Love, I suppose. And then they come out of the bye at Denver, home to Minnesota, home to the Rams. Not sure about going to Denver. That's a good defense and an offense that will at least be well schemed. Minnesota and the Rams at home, winnable games. We'll see when the wheels fall off for the Rams. If they do, there's a scenario where that happens. At Pittsburgh, Chargers, at Detroit, Kansas City, at the Giants. This is their toughest stretch by a mile. There are a lot of good teams in there and a lot of good teams on the road. You got to go to New York, go to Detroit, go to Pittsburgh, and then your 2 home games, Chargers and Chiefs. That is not an easy stretch. And then they end the year, Tampa Bay, at Carolina, at Minnesota, Chicago, and there are winnable games there. So there aren't a ton of easy games on this schedule, but there are a lot of coin flips for me. We have this at 9, and hopefully we can go ahead and get over that number there, or over 7.5. But this is one of those teams where you're going to play outliers here. If you think Love's going to be really good, over 8.5, over 9.5. If you don't think he's going to be good, under 6.5, under 5.5. It seems like a lot of outliers here, but over 7.5 is where we're going here. We'll have a new team tomorrow, and we're done with the Packers.